The rain hadn't stopped for hours. A steady sheet of water blurred the Cincinnati streets like a weeping curtain. The taxi's windshield wipers squeaked back and forth in a metronomic rhythm. Ellis Monroe, a veteran cab driver in his late 40s, leaned forward, eyes squinting through the haze. The streets were almost deserted. It was 12:47 a.m. He sighed, adjusting his grip on the steering wheel. His shift should have ended 20 minutes ago, but something about tonight, maybe the weather, maybe the quiet, kept him circling downtown blocks like a moth near a dying light. The dispatch radio crackled. Unit 514, do you copy? Got a pickup request on Linden Avenue, corner of Ashburn Street. Ellis picked up the receiver. 514 here, I'll take it. He knew Linden. A quiet residential stretch near the old cemetery, far from bars or shops. Odd place for a fair this late. His taxi rolled through puddles, the tires whispering over slick asphalt. As he turned onto Linden, he saw her, a woman standing perfectly still under a street lamp. She wore a pale coat that looked almost white in the glow, her hair damp and dark. She didn't wave or move. She just stood there, like she had been waiting forever. Ellis pulled up and unlocked the rear doors with a soft click. She opened the door and slid in silently. No hello, no small talk, just a whispered, "Drive." He glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Her eyes were lowered, skin pale, lips slightly parted like she was about to say something, then changed her mind. "Where to?" he asked. "Just keep going. I'll tell you when." Unusual, but not unheard of. Ellis had driven drunk college kids, night shift nurses, even a magician once. But this felt different. It felt cold. He nodded and pulled away from the curb. The rain thickened. The radio played soft jazz, the signal occasionally warped by static. The woman remained silent. Ellis noticed she didn't have a purse, phone, or umbrella. She held nothing. Just her hands folded neatly in her lap. "You okay back there?" he asked, his voice deliberately light. "Yes," she said. "Just tired." They passed intersections, lights. Buildings grew fewer and far between. Ellis realized they were heading out of town. "You know the meter goes into long-distance fares past Millstone, right?" "That's fine." The first time she spoke without whispering. Her voice was calm with an old sadness. They passed the Millstone gas station, then the diner that had been closed for years. Then, "Left here," she said. It was a small road, one Ellis didn't recognize. No sign, just trees, reaching like fingers toward the road. "You sure?" "Yes." He turned. Instantly, the trees swallowed the taxi. Darkness closed in, interrupted only by the twin cones of headlights. The road was narrow, unmarked, and lined with damp leaves. Branches brushed the roof like skeletal arms. Ellis's fingers tightened on the wheel. He flicked a glance at the mirror. She was staring straight at him. Not at the back of his head, but into the mirror, right into his eyes. He blinked. She smiled, just barely. Then her gaze dropped again. "Almost there," she whispered. The taxi hit a bump. Ellis nearly jerked the wheel. He scanned the road ahead but saw no potholes. Just movement. Something dark had darted across. "What was that?" he muttered. The woman didn't respond. Then, "Stop here." Ellis braked. They had arrived at nothing. Just trees. A clearing. Mist rising between trunks like breath from unseen mouths. "You sure?" he asked, uneasy. "Yes." She opened the door and stepped out. Before he could ask anything else, she walked into the trees. No umbrella, no flashlight, vanished in seconds. Ellis sat there, the rain loud against the roof. He considered calling out. Instead, he turned to look at the back seat. There was something there. A small, leather-bound book. He reached back and picked it up. The cover was soft. A name was etched in cursive. Clara Monroe, his last name. He opened it. Inside were sketches, pencil drawings. A man, a woman, a child. Always together, always smiling. And then, a single page at the end. A drawing of Ellis, alone. Eyes hollow, face older. With a note underneath. You forgot, but I didn't. The windshield was fogging up. Ellis sat motionless in the front seat of his idling cab, the soft hum of the engine vibrating beneath him. His eyes lingered on the spot where the woman, Clara, had disappeared into the misty woods. The rain had tapered to a drizzle now, but the silence it left in its wake felt heavier, more pressing. She was gone. Just like that. Ellis exhaled sharply, a puff of breath fogging the already misted glass. He turned off the wipers, shut off the engine, and listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no animals, no wind. Just the ticking of the cooling engine and his own racing heartbeat. He looked at the book again. Clara Monroe. The name echoed in his mind like a bell struck in an empty cathedral. It wasn't common. And the sketches, the faces. One was clearly him, though younger. The woman in the drawings. He couldn't remember her. But the child stirred something. A smile. A dim memory of laughter, of small arms around his neck. Ellis closed the book slowly. His fingers trembled. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or fate, but something in his gut twisted with unease. She knew his name, left him this, wanted him to remember. He opened the door. The night air was sharp and wet. Leaves clung to his shoes as he stepped out. He stood in the mist, straining to hear any sound. Then, with one last glance at the cab, he stepped into the trees. The forest swallowed him instantly. It was darker than it had any right to be. Even with the glow from the taxi's headlights stretching feebly behind him, the trees ahead seemed to fold into themselves, casting unnatural shadows. Ellis moved cautiously, ducking under branches, brushing aside wet leaves. His breath came in quick puffs. His mind buzzed with thoughts about Clara, about the drawings, about what this all meant. Then, a sound. A soft, rhythmic creaking, like rope or wood. He froze, turned his head. There, just beyond a cluster of trees, was a structure. A swing set, old, rusted. Two wooden seats dangling from frayed ropes. One swayed slightly, as if recently used. Behind it, a house, or what was left of one. Half collapsed, the roof caved in on one side. Moss covered the walls, ivy creeping through shattered windows. The front door hung open, crooked on its hinges. Ellis stepped closer, heart pounding. He had never seen this place before, yet something about it felt familiar, like a dream he once had, now returning in fragments. Inside, the air smelled of rot and old wood. The floor creaked under his weight. He moved carefully through the foyer, eyes scanning the walls. Faded wallpaper, an overturned lamp, broken picture frames littered the ground. Then he saw it. A photo, still intact, face down on a dusty shelf. He picked it up and wiped the glass. It was the same trio from the sketchbook. Him, the woman, the child. This was his house. Or had been. But why didn't he remember? A whisper. Ellis! He spun. The voice had come from upstairs. The staircase groaned under his steps. At the top, the hallway yawned before him, lined with dark doorways. A cold draft stirred his jacket. He stepped into the first room. A child's room. Peeling wallpaper with faded cartoon characters. A small bed, its sheets moth-eaten. A stuffed bear with a missing eye sat in the corner. More sketches on the wall. Crayons, faces, smiles. He reached out and touched the drawings, his fingers tracing the lines. Then, footsteps, soft, down the hall. He rushed out. "Clara?" No answer. He entered the next room. Empty. Just a dresser and a shattered mirror. His reflection stared back at him. Older, worn, afraid. Then the final door at the end of the hall creaked open. Light spilled out. He approached slowly, each step feeling like a mile. Inside, the room was pristine, untouched by time. Clean bed, curtains gently swaying. A woman stood by the window looking out. Clara. She turned. Her face was calm, sad, but warm. "You came," she said. Ellis opened his mouth. No words came. She walked toward him, placing a hand on his chest. "You don't remember, but this was home." Ellis blinked, his throat tight. "What happened?" Her eyes shimmered. "You left, after the accident, after we lost her." The child. Flashes hit him. Screeching tires, a scream, a hospital bed, pain, guilt. He had run, blocked it all out, and now the past had found him. "I never blamed you," Clara whispered. "But you forgot us. You forgot her." Ellis felt tears sliding down his cheeks. "I didn't mean to." She placed the sketchbook in his hands again. "Remember her, for both of us." Then she stepped back and began to fade, like mist. "Clara, wait!" But she was gone. The room darkened. Cold returned. Ellis stood there, the sketchbook heavy in his hands, the truth crashing into him like a wave. He had a family. He lost them. He buried the memory so deep it took a ghost to unearth it. Now, he had a choice. Stay lost. Or go back. Outside, the cab waited, headlights still cutting through the trees. He walked back, the forest strangely quiet. He got in, started the engine, and drove. Not away, but towards something. Redemption. Memory. The truth. To be continued. The morning after Clara disappeared into the woods, Ellis Monroe didn't sleep. He sat in his silent apartment, the leather-bound book cradled in his lap like an unanswered question. The rain had finally stopped, but a thick fog hung outside his window, creeping along the glass like fingers searching for a way in. Ellis hadn't called the police. What would he say? That a ghost, or something like it, got into his taxi and left behind a book full of memories he couldn't recall? No, he needed answers first. And the only place that might hold them was the old Monroe house. He hadn't been back there in over 30 years. At 10:17 a.m., Ellis threw on his old jacket, stuffed Clara's book into the inside pocket, and got into his cab. He didn't tell the dispatcher he was heading out of town. Didn't say goodbye. He just drove. The Monroe house sat on the edge of Briar Hollow, a small community 2 hours north of Cincinnati. The last time Ellis saw it, he was 16, getting into a social worker's car after the fire that killed his parents. He hadn't wanted to look back then. But now he couldn't look away. As he neared the town, landmarks began to return like ghosts. The rusted water tower, the skeletal frame of the old train depot, and finally, at the end of a winding road lined with blackened trees, the house. It was still there. Half collapsed, vines crawling up its scorched siding like veins. The roof sagged, the chimney was gone, and shattered glass littered the porch like broken memories. But the bones of it remained. Ellis killed the engine and stepped out. The forest around the house was unnervingly silent. No birds, no wind, just the distant creak of shifting wood. He approached the front steps and froze. The front door was open, not ajar, not broken, open, like someone was waiting. With a deep breath, Ellis stepped inside. The air was cold and stale, tinged with the scent of ash and mildew. Sunlight filtered through the broken slats, casting lines of gold across blackened walls. The living room was mostly rubble. The fireplace crumbled, the furniture decayed beyond recognition. But the staircase still stood. Ellis climbed it slowly, boots creaking on old wood. At the top, he turned left, instinct guiding him to a room he hadn't thought about in decades. Clara's room. He opened the door and froze. The room was intact. No fire damage, no decay. Just a neatly made bed, floral wallpaper, and a rocking horse by the window. The air smelled of lavender. Ellis stepped inside. Everything was too clean, too perfect, like the room had been frozen in time. He reached out and touched the bedspread. Warm. His breath caught. Then, a creak. Behind him. He spun around. No one. But the rocking horse was moving. Back and forth. Back and forth. He stepped backward, heart thudding. Then a voice. Soft. Familiar. "You left me, Ellis." He turned. Clara stood at the foot of the bed, wearing the same pale coat, her eyes dark and mournful. "You let them forget me." His mouth opened. No words came. "I waited. All this time." He shook his head. "I didn't know. I didn't remember." "You made yourself forget," she said, "because it hurt." Tears welled in Ellis's eyes. "Clara? I was just a kid. After the fire—" There was no fire. He froze. "What?" "There was no fire, Ellis. That's what they told you. But it wasn't true." She stepped closer. The room darkened slightly, as if the light outside was dimming. "You didn't see what came for us that night." Ellis felt cold seep into his bones. The shadow in the woods. His mind flashed back to the strange movement on the road the night she disappeared. The dark blur. The feeling of being watched. "It took them first," she whispered. "Mom. Dad. I hid. You were already outside. I tried to scream for you, but it wouldn't let me." Tears streamed down Ellis's cheeks. "And now it's waking again." A chill swept the room. Ellis turned toward the window. In the forest, the fog shifted. A shape moved. Something tall. Something wrong. Clara placed a hand on his. "You came back. That means it can't hide anymore." Ellis stared into her eyes. "What do I do?" She looked toward the forest. "End it." Suddenly the window shattered inward with a shriek of wind. The rocking horse flew across the room. The air grew impossibly cold. Clara vanished. Ellis stumbled back out the door and down the stairs. The house groaned around him as if protesting his presence. He burst outside into the gray light. The forest whispered. He turned toward it and walked in. The trees closed around him. Fog clung to his skin like cobwebs. Every step forward felt heavier. The book inside his coat pocket throbbed with warmth. He didn't know how long he walked, but eventually he found it. A clearing. In the center, a stone well. Old, cracked, overgrown, and standing beside it, the shadow. Not a man, not an animal, something in between. Long limbs, head like a deer skull, antlers broken and blackened, eyes like wet coal. It turned toward him. Ellis felt its gaze burn into his soul, but he did not run. Instead, he pulled the book from his pocket and opened it to the final page. His face. Alone. "I remember now," he said. The shadow hissed. Ellis took a step forward. "I remember you." It lunged. He held the book up like a shield. The pages fluttered. Wind howled. The shadow screamed. A blinding light burst from the book, consuming everything. Trees bent. Fog vanished. The world turned white. Then silence. Ellis opened his eyes. The well was gone. The clearing was peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the branches. He was alone. He looked down. The book was gone. But in the dirt before him, written in soft, childlike letters, "Thank you." Ellis lingered at the edge of the clearing, his chest still heaving with the last echoes of fear. The ancient stone well and its monstrous inhabitant, both erased from the world, as if violence had been undone, and grief with it. In their absence, the air grew gentler, sunlight spilled down between the leaves, and the hush that followed held a faint, precious hope. But Ellis, standing among the roots and fallen leaves, understood what others would not. Some endings are only beginnings in disguise. It wasn't over. Not yet. He inhaled shakily, steadying himself, and turned back toward the trees. The same path that had swallowed him in shadow now parted easily before him, as if the forest itself exhaled. Sunlight flashed through the green above. Birds began to call, testing the quiet, weaving new threads of life into the morning. Yet there was something else. A nudge behind his ribs, a compass pointing him onward. Ellis trusted it and let it guide his feet. Nearly an hour later, he broke through the thinning woods and saw the Monroe house. In daylight's glare, its shambles and ruin were even starker. Where once the place had crouched, thick with threat, it now felt void, a hollow shell, not a grave. The fear had guttered out. The siege was done. Even so, Ellis felt no urge to step through that door. There was nothing left inside he needed. The book, its pages, its memories, its warnings, all had played their part. Let the past rest. Instead, he walked to his battered cab. He laid a hand on the roof, grounding himself. Then, as he opened the driver's side door, a chill slid up his spine. In the rear-view mirror, a shape, a presence, waited, still as silence. There, in the back seat, sat Clara. She was no longer the fleeting shadow he had glimpsed in dreams and fears, nor the silent child haunting empty rooms. Time had settled into her bones. His sister was a woman now, her hair thick and dark, her eyes the same living hazel he had loved as a boy. She smiled, warm and bittersweet. "Ready?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ellis could not speak. He slid into the seat, started the engine with trembling hands, and rolled out onto the old gravel lane. The ride began in a hush, words unnecessary. He drove, watching the woods thin and the sky open wide. Only when miles unspooled behind them did he find his tongue. "I thought you were gone," he said, voice raw. Clara's eyes met his in the mirror. "I was. But you came back. You remembered. That's all I needed." He studied her reflection, solid, unwavering, searching for some sign, some secret. "Who are you now? What are you?" Her gaze wandered through the glass, out to the world rolling by. "Maybe I'm just a memory given shape. Maybe more. It's enough to be real to you." Ellis pressed his lips together, uncertain, but comfort fluttered in his chest. They drifted along winding roads, lush and familiar, and the pain between them began to ease. Clara leaned forward. "You still have the book?" Ellis reached for his coat, then froze. The book, the source of so many nights sleepless, so much terror, it was gone. Clara nodded, unsurprised. "It did what it needed to, helped you remember, nothing more." He stared ahead, memory bleeding into the present. "That thing out there, it's really gone?" Her answer was patient. For now. It was never just a thing. It was hunger, loneliness, growing in the empty places people forget. It finds hurts left untended. It found us because we were alone, broken. Her words wrapped around him, bittersweet, heavy. Ellis gripped the wheel harder. Why me? Why was I spared? The question was a wound he'd carried for years. "In the end, you ran, but you refused to forget. Even through all this, you kept me alive." He swallowed, regret thick in his voice. "I never meant to leave you." "I know," Clara replied, warmth shining in her eyes. They fell back into silence. comforted now. Trees blurred past as civilization gradually crept in. When they crossed into the city's edge, something felt off. Cincinnati's busy streets stood empty. No horns, no footsteps, only silence. Ellis stopped at a meaningless red light. Clara opened her door. "I have to go now." He looked back, desperate. "Go where?" She smiled that same small, secret smile. "Home, maybe. Or wherever I belong. You brought me back, Ellis. Now it's your turn." "My turn," he repeated, confusion sharp. Clara stepped out, the world rippling faintly around her as she moved to the sidewalk. Light seemed to gather, clinging to her like a blessing. "You forgot once. You ran, but you chose to return. That matters. Now you can decide. Keep driving or finally stop running." Ellis strained to see her, to understand, but she was already fading, becoming part of the morning air. In the sudden hush, the city flickered to life. Distant laughter, a tricycle's squeak, an old woman watering roses, a man with groceries. Life was returning, bright and true, but Clara was gone. Only her coat remained on the sidewalk, folded and waiting. Ellis stared at it for a long, quiet moment. He picked it up, a weight settling kindly on his shoulders, and sat in the driver's seat once again. For a while he rested his hands on the steering wheel, thinking of what had been lost and found. With quiet resolve, he flipped the meter switch. The faded screen burst to life. "Next fare." On the corner, a woman in a red dress raised her hand. Ellis smiled, pulled over, and rolled down the window. "Are you available?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, where to?" She gave her address. Ellis shifted into drive. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He drove into tomorrow.